Hi, you guys. Hope your day or evening is going well. All right, another video here in the SkillsHub.life channel. What we're going to talk about today is the dead feeling. This applies, I find, quite often to voice acting. It can apply to voiceover as well. You know, at SkillsHub.life, we differentiate between those two as the ways to make money with your voice that are acting heavy versus the ways to make money with your voice that are more voiceover, less voice acting. So this happens quite often sometimes in the voice acting world. You go to do a scene and people will often play their idea of what an emotion might look like or a situation might look like. And that doesn't connect. Acting, I have found, especially in games and in the animated series that are more dramatic, and even in the wild, crazy ones, although you can cover it more in those, acting has evolved to a level of truth that's pretty rigorous. And there are times when you can pick up a script and you can look at it and you just don't connect. You just have the dead feeling. Now, let's talk about how you read a script. We'll probably do another video on this at some point, but reading a script, how you pick that thing up and start is very, very important. Don't pick it up to immediately figure out how you're going to act the scene. Don't do that. In fact, never, ever look at anything like, how am I going to act this scene? Please don't. Please don't do that. When you read that script, you want to read it to understand. You want to read it to understand the writing, to understand the story, to understand where you fit in. It's a wonderful conversation with JB Blanc in our A Minute With podcast series on the site, where we sit down and talk to coaches in depth. And JB says just some wonderful things and shares great tidbits about reading that script and how to go about reading that script to set yourself up for success. But we'll get into that at another time. Right now, just know that go in to read that script multiple times and forget about how you're going to perform it. Do not do that ever, 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 ever. Understand what's happening. That's why you're reading. Understand the big picture. Understand the story. Sometimes you only get an Excel spreadsheet with a few lines. Like, you have to create a story around all that. Quite often in those, each line is a story, right? So sometimes when we read those and we get the dead feeling, we're not connecting, right? That's what's happening. You're not lacking as an actor. You're not lacking as a human. You just haven't connected. So you got to find a way in. How do you do that? I will share how I do that. And everyone's going to have a different approach, right? Stay open to all the different approaches and take what works for you and throw out the rest. Okay. What I do is I go in and I look for what I call the common humanity in the scene. What's the situation? What's the deal? What's happening? Joseph Campbell wrote some extraordinary books. One of them was The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He wrote The Power of Myth. I think it was in The Power of Myth, he talks about how there are X number of stories that we tell in human culture. Many different, he studied all sorts of human cultures, right? And he boiled it down to there are just X number of stories that we tell over and over. And those stories have certain archetypes. The hero, the villain, the best friend, the ingenue, the young man just coming into the world, the prince, the disillusioned, whatever. There's the troll. There are all sorts of these archetypes that are at play. So when you read a script, like back up. What movie that you love does it remind you of? Like, what pieces of the story can you resonate with? Find anything in there, all right? And that's a point of connection, understanding the humanity of the whole story, because we all have common experiences, and that's what storytelling is about, bringing to life those common experiences so we can all go through this together. Art is a very, very powerful thing, and all this that we do is art in some form, right? Okay. So that's the first thing, understanding what's going on. Now that word what is a really important key, okay? Get very mechanical with it. And this goes into really basic script analysis and technique stuff that you learn by studying through the years, studying with really good people, studying with good communicators is also very important, because someone can be very skilled and not as skilled at communicating how to do it, right? That's what we're working on here. Okay. So you get a sense of the story. Then look at this scene that you're dealing with, or look at this line from the Excel spreadsheet, if that's all you've got, and imagine what's happening. Why is your character saying what they're saying? That word what? What do they want? What does the other person want? Most scenes are people pushing against each other this way, or fighting against an external obstacle for a very specific reason. What's that reason? Is there something in that you can connect to? Keep hunting. You're a detective. Read over and over. Do not go to performance yet. Don't do it. Go to understand. Go to connect to your common humanity and what's starting to make sense to you in the scene. And if nothing is, if you're just looking at those 6 lines on an Excel spreadsheet, or a whole 2 pages of disjointed who knows what, take them one at a time and build a little scene around it and make it up and make it something that matters to you. Okay? This is getting a little vague, but this is the vague territory. Emotional connection is the vague territory. So let's talk about emotional. Let's build on that word. When you're doing a scene, you're bringing a human being to life. And that human being is having an emotional journey, right? And to bring that human being to life, you've got to connect to your own emotions. You don't want to throw your emotions all over the mic or all over the screen or whatever you're doing, whether it's on camera or voice acting. You don't want to throw them all over the place, but you do need to have them going on inside. Which means that a personal practice of understanding your own feelings, even what do I want to call it? Inventorying them, cataloging them, like, oh, what's happening to me right now? I'm feeling, whenever you're uncomfortable, fabulous opportunity to go, what am I feeling? You're like, I don't know. Great. Let me just log this moment. What are my hands doing? What is my body doing? What are my legs doing? What are my toes doing? Am I squeezing my butt? Like, what's happening to me? Is my breath getting weird? Like, just log all the physical symptoms. Just take a second and put it in your library. As you go through this craft, or if those of you who've gone through this craft, you already know this, you've got this library of experiences and moments, and there's going to be something. For some people, it'll be tactile. It'll be the feeling of something. For some people, it'll be the smell of something. For some people, it'll be the sight of something or the sound of something. Just put it in your library with a little tag on it and go, that moment felt like that. And these don't have to be huge moments. They can be like, oh, I was so annoyed at that clerk. Great. You're going to have a moment in a script somewhere where you need to be annoyed. Pull that out. Throw it in there. Use it. This is vague, right? It's not concrete. I'm kind of moving around a whole bunch of places because emotional connection is incredibly individual. So what I'm giving you here are a bunch of little things that for some of you will jog something, for some of you it won't. Some will work on one day and they won't work on the other day. The thing about the emotional library that we draw on to go in and do our work is it needs to be vast, but don't let that intimidate you. Just always be throwing something in there. Go, oh yeah, I'll remember that for that. I mean, I've done things like, rock climbing and slipped and fell, and I was like, oh, there's that sound. As I'm falling, going, wow, that's a great scream. I should remember that. Like, the two things are happening at once, and you'll get to that point where even as you're having an experience, you're thinking, I'm going to remember this experience, which is good. You kind of memory mark it and stick it in the files for later. All right. Emotional connection's tough, and the main point that I want to make here is that when you look at a script and you've been studying it and you've looked at what's happening, what your character wants, what's in your way, why your character's there, what other people are saying to them, all those elements, and you still find yourself going, I'm feeling nothing. It's because you haven't found a key yet. And this is not a failing. This is just part of the process. That script is asking you to hunt further, these are the times when I love getting a coach because time is of the essence and I got to get this done. I love 10 minutes with someone I trust. That's how the site was started, right? Just know that what's missing is you just haven't quite found that key. And look, sometimes on a terrible day, your key can just be the feeling you're having that you can't connect. Like you can connect to, like, maybe what you're trying to do in the scene is just get connected. Maybe that's enough fuel to get you going. So this is a lot of stuff. It's a lot of vague stuff. It's kind of ephemeral. But what I want you to come away with is it's not a personal failing. It's always technique. It's always just like keep hunting. And look, some jobs are not for you. Not every job is your job, right? Not every script is your script. But use them to develop. Use them to grow, right? Use them to bring out new things in you, okay? So, number one, I lost my train of thought. I had to wake my screen back up. That vague feeling is telling you to keep looking. That disconnected feeling is telling you to go to your internal emotional library, maybe stock it up some more, maybe fish around a little bit in there, go to some classic old school tools like Stanislavski, Uta Hagen, all those old school acting books that are so valuable for sense memory, or Meisner for substitution. There's all these different techniques you can pull from. That's your classic training, and it's there for a reason. It's super useful. And then connect. And if everything falls away, just use your frustration or your feeling about the fact that you're having trouble with the scene as the fuel for the scene. It doesn't have to be right. It doesn't have to be perfect. And no one has to know what it is. That's your private business. Whatever the fuel you're using to drive the engine is your private business. All right? That's emotional connection, that dead feeling inside. And now, on top of that, always must come cover. We'll talk about that in another video. But keep going. You're doing great. Very, very glad you're here. Have a great day. Bye.